A record poll this evening. 41,100 people have voted. The poll was hijacked on Twitter, but the hijackers don't understand that our poll covers all platforms on which the show is broadcast. So they're in for a disappointment when the poll results are in, I suspect. But get your vote in now. Will Israel defeat Hezbollah? Yes or no? You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my Twitter, on the YouTube community poll, and on the YouTube stream. Have your say. Don't be hijacked. There's so much to talk about tonight, I scarcely know where to start. I'm going to leave the most important to last. So, the first topic I have to inform you of is that YouTube have made an effort to stop us interviewing Scott Ritter this evening on the show. But we don't do surrendering to bullies. So we are going to stand up for our right to pick our own guests. That's why when we come to the interview with Scott Ritter this evening, a man who has easily outranked all other guests on the mother of all talk shows over the last few years, a man who has chalked up millions of views in his interviews with us on YouTube, is now so banned from YouTube that not only have they banned his channel, banned him presenting shows, they're now trying to ban others from hosting him as a guest on their shows. So we will not accept that. So just before the interview with Scott Ritter this evening, which will be towards the end of the show, we're asking you to retune to the other platforms on which we are, for the moment, broadcasting freely, without censorship, without big tech intervention in what we can say and who we can interview. That means there will be a board left on the screen if you are watching on YouTube, which will tell you the reason that you have to migrate to other platforms to hear this important interview. It is a kind of madness. There can never have been a more important time to interview Scott Ritter. In any free society, this obvious, blindingly obvious truth would be self-evident. To choose this moment to try to silence me from interviewing Scott Ritter is the ultimate act of tyranny. And we don't lie down for tyrants on the mother of all talk shows. We stand up to bullies. So that's just a means. I'll be reminding you throughout the show. You're welcome to watch the show on YouTube, and many of you do. Record numbers on Wednesday's show. Well over 4 million people will see last Wednesday's show by the time of next Wednesday. You're welcome to keep on watching us on YouTube, but when Scott Ritter comes on, you're going to have to watch us on Twitter, on Rumble, on any of the multiple other platforms that we appear on. I'm sorry about that. We have had a long association with YouTube. We have a mutually profitable one. They pay us quite a lot of money. We earn them even more money. We are one of the go-to channels on YouTube. We have almost 500,000 subscribers. We have hundreds of millions of views. Hundreds of millions of views. Just think about that on YouTube. But we may be ending our period of cooperation with them. They will have to end it, not us. We'll keep broadcasting on YouTube for as long as we can. But as they have now this evening removed all of the content of our Texas Rose, the lovely Rachel Blevins, a beautiful all-American girl, a young woman making her way in broadcasting and chalking up 63,000 subscribers on YouTube, has been removed at a stroke for hate speech. They suddenly remembered, after 8 years of hosting her, that she's a hate speecher, when of course nothing could be further from the truth. This fragrant young American woman is merely speaking her truth, and a huge number of people apparently want to hear it. But YouTube has decided, like some tyrannical censor from a grim dictatorship, to excise all of her works, not just to cut her off, but to remove all of her previous work. It's an act of historical, artistic, cultural, and political vandalism. You are wreckers, YouTube. And at whose behest are you doing these things? Glenn Deason, another regular guest of ours, had his YouTube channel removed this week. Scott Ritter, African Stream, one after the other of our guests have been removed by YouTube. And now YouTube have taken to effectively instructing us that because they have banned these people, we cannot have them on our show. So we are in dark and dangerous waters. The West has become the tyranny, more tyrannical than any of the tyrannies with which they once compared themselves oh so favorably. And at the most critical time, a point to which I'm about to turn. But before that, I want to talk about the right to die. Labour's crowning achievement in its first 3 months is to put up a former parliamentary opponent of mine, Kim Ledbetter, deliberately chosen, the sister of a member of parliament, a late member of parliament who was murdered by a lunatic in the street whilst in pursuit of her duties. So Kim Ledbetter starts with an emotional advantage in this argument, and the Labour Party, a Labour Party, as its flagship policy, is introducing state-sponsored suicide in Britain. Of course, at the moment, you'll have to ask for it. At the moment, you'll have to pay for it. But on a Swiss-style model of climbing into a capsule while the state facilitates your self-slaughter. I oppose suicide with all of my heart. I oppose it for moral and religious, but also political reasons. Labour is now about to take us down a path which will lead to the chronically sick, to the badly disabled, and to the elderly, no longer turning a profit for anyone and standing in the way of their children's legacy. Their children unable to get a hold on that house or unable to see their legacy dwindle away with the costs of social care in private residential homes and so on. It'll be nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Come on, Granny, you've had a good life. Why don't you climb into this capsule? In Britain, we have set our canon against self-slaughter, in the words of William Shakespeare himself. But Labour is all for it. And as Labour now has an overwhelming majority in the House of Commons, albeit on merely 19% of the popular vote, one must assume that Britain will join the Swiss pathway to hell of introducing state-sponsored suicide. I'm against it religiously because I believe that God decides when we leave this earth, and not some here today, gone tomorrow politician, not some doctor. War is too important to be left to generals. Death is too important to be left to doctors. And it's very much too important to be left to politicians. But there are other reasons for opposing it. You don't have to share my religious belief to think that our society will be grievously wounded, poisoned by going down this route. Because the truth is, the chronically sick, the people at an advanced age, are of no use to capitalist society. They don't spend much. They won't ever turn a profit for anyone again. But they are repositories of great wisdom and experience. Grandparents are very, very important. Elderly parents can set you on the right path and stop you from pursuing the wrong one. Elderly parents were once the workers who made the country great. Elderly parents were once your parents. Without them, you would not exist. You have a debt to them to treat them in the way that they treated you when you were helpless as a baby, as a young person who could not have lived without their efforts, without their love. It is a sign of a rancid and toxic society that it disposes or seeks to dispose of its elderly with such contempt and such disdain. So I will be doing everything I can to stop us taking this pathway to hell. The fact that they've chosen a bitter parliamentary opponent of mine, Kim Ledbetter, as the person to sponsor the bill, which they're calling a private member's bill, calling a free vote, but Keir Starmer has already supported it. So if you want to keep in with Keir Starmer, you better vote for this bill. And the other forces in the Parliament are too weak or themselves too morally compromised to do anything about it. Let me turn to the big enchilada, which may render all of what I've just said otiose. There may be no YouTube. There may be no mother of all talk shows. There may be no elderly parents, grandparents. There may be no you. Your country may no longer exist if what we expect to happen now begins to happen. You see the total frenzy of murderous violence being engaged by the mad dog of the state of Israel. A mad dog which we thought we owned, but which we have now learned is owned by nobody. A devil dog, a dog so savage that it can turn upon anyone, including the person holding its leash. The mad dog of Israel having killed hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza. 6% of the entire population of Gaza has been murdered, has disappeared. If that's not a genocide, if that's not a Holocaust, then you tell me what it is. 6% of the population of your country equals what? 6% of the United States population. Do the math. 6% of the British population, the French population. Well, in this case, it is 6% of the Palestinian population, who moreover were your international responsibility. They were refugees. In legal terms, your responsibility. They were living in illegally occupied territory, as decided by you in your United Nations, as decided by you in your International Court of Justice. You had a duty to them, yet you have sat silent or in complicity with the mass murder of people whose safety and well-being was your responsibility. 6% of the population of Gaza is now dead. And if you add the mutilated, the wounded, unable to be treated, the amputees, the disabled people, the blinded people, the people whose lives mentally have been scorched forevermore by the last 12 months, you are looking at a rabid, mad, devil, demon, dog, indeed, more savage than any you've ever seen on a leash anywhere. And now they're doing it to Lebanon. Actually, they're also trying to do it to Syria. They are doing it to the people of Yemen, and they are preparing to do it to the people of Iran. The difference between Iran and all the foregoing is that Iran is more than capable of standing up for itself and fully intends to do so. So, the story goes that Israel is about to make a serious, substantial response to Iran's response to Israeli crimes. They say they are going to attack Iran's nuclear facilities, creating a nuclear disaster for all of our friends in the Persian Gulf, by the way, including in the states we regard as ours. They are going to target Iran's oil industry, in which case, kiss any oil supplies coming through the Straits of Hormuz, kiss it goodbye. Because if they attack Iran's oil facilities, Iran will destroy the oil facilities of the Western allies in the Persian Gulf, and they will blockade the Straits of Hormuz. So forget about oil and petrol and diesel. Even at $100 a gallon, you ain't going to get any. Think about that. Think of the economic devastation that will be caused in the next day or two if Iran is attacked through its oil facilities. And the third option is to attack Iran's political leadership, to try and bring about a regime change in Iran. In any or all three of these eventualities, Iran is now publicly pledged, and from what I hear is already mobilizing, a retaliation against Israel 10, 100 times more serious than the response they made to Israel just the other night. Think about that. Think what that means. Think of 10 times more. Think of 100 times more. Think of the complete demolition of all Israeli infrastructure. Think of the devastation on all Israeli cities. And what would Israel's response to the response to the response to the response be? Well, they've told us, even though officially they don't have nuclear weapons, they're going to fire the nuclear weapons they don't have at Iran, which is why the explosion under the desert in central Iran this afternoon is of such momentous importance. Because it tells you Iran too has the nuclear bomb. And why shouldn't they? This is the mother of all talk shows.